Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Yes, this is the Magic the Gathering video. We're here, we're doing it. First up, as you may have noticed behind me, I got a sign. It's not really in center and it's obviously backwards. I don't want to flip it because then I'm going to look weird in this. Maybe I'll do it in post. Probably not because I like the angle. Point is, the sign's for me and I do like it. So, last time we talked about the Grand Theft Auto role-playing community and how certain people within the community who are doing spicy roleplay with one another, turns out we're also doing just spicy play with one another. Today, as I mentioned before, we're talking about the Magic the Gathering community and specifically a subset of the community who play a specific format of the game called Commander. Starting from the tippy top, most people I think are aware of a game called Magic the Gathering, which is a card-based game. The game was initially released in 1993 by a company called Wizards of the Coast, who still owns it to this day. And it has been and continues to be a very popular game. It has nearly 800,000 subscribers to the Magic the Gathering subreddit, and Hasbro has estimated about 50 million people have played the game worldwide. Part of the reason why it's so popular is because there are a number of different what are called formats for how you can play the game. You can think about the difference between playing different formats of MTG as like playing different games with billiards. So normally when people say, let's play pool, they mean specifically 8-ball. But there are other games like 9-ball that you can play that are still playing pool. You're still playing billiards. You're just playing a different format of billiards. It's the same thing here. So anybody who's playing any of these formats is using the same Magic the Gathering cards, but they're using them in different configurations with different numbers of people, with different rules and different success conditions. One of those formats is called Commander, and that was actually invented by a player literally a year after the initial game released in 1994. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of everything about Commander. I'll reference specific things that are relevant to this story as they come up, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to keep it moving. So remember how I said a guy invented this after the game came out? That means it wasn't an official, new version of this game that was released by Wizards of the Coast. This was a fan-made format. So this guy came up with this format, started playing with his friends, it got really popular, and it is now very established as a common format that you'll see in a lot of places. It in fact got so popular that Wizards of the Coast started releasing cards specific to that format that really wouldn't be used in any other scenario. And obviously Wizards has a vested interest in people playing Commander because it encourages people to play Magic generally, which requires buying things from them. They're all happy with that. All of this to say, the format is one that is kind of like co-managed by the community of people who play it and Wizards of the Coast officially. And one way that that played out over the years is that the community had a committee in charge of managing the rules of play for the format as a whole. What does that mean? Why does that exist? When you have a game like this, for example, any of these formats that are based on Magic the Gathering, but this would apply to any game that has continual updates. For example, Wizards of the Coast continues to release new Magic cards all the time. There are over 25,000 Magic cards. As this happens, the rules for your format or whatever thing that you're playing have to change and evolve with those changes, because something that gets released in the future could totally break the rules that you made that existed before that card or whatever was available. The theoretical goal of the rules committee is to manage the rules of the game in such a way that the most number of people get the most fun, quality satisfaction out of the games. This includes stepping in and making decisions that will affect the way people play based on how they see people playing currently and if corrections in their mind need to be made for the benefit of all. This would of course be based on the opinion of the rules committee. And there are a lot of people who spend a lot of time and have a lot of intense feelings about this game. So, what could go wrong? So, what happened? Well, they made a decision and everything exploded. Just about a month ago, on September 23rd, the Commander Rules Committee Twitter account posted an update announcing that there were 4 cards which were being banned from the format moving forward. There is a ton of detail in this situation. I'm going to try and include as much as I can from both primary sides of this argument. An extremely simplified and high-level summary of the reasoning the Rules Committee gave for why these 4 cards were banned are as follows. For 3 of the cards, they're the type of cards that if you happen to get them in your initial hand when you start the game, it kind of collapses the game because it's like an automatic win almost for the person who had them in their initial hand. This was something that had been true for a while, but the committee puts in their announcement that they were seeing a more frequency of that happening in games, and it's not an enjoyable thing to have happen because it's functionally somebody shows they have it and you may as well stop playing at that point, so it's almost like you didn't play in the first place. And then the last card is one that has already been banned in a number of other MTG formats and apparently grinds the game down to a slog, so they're just like, let's get rid of it. Now, of those 4 cards, very generally, 2 of them most people don't seem to care about. Tend to agree, yeah, it's probably better that we don't have these. The other two, absolutely not. There are two primary reasons why people are so upset about these particular cards. One is that a good number of people fundamentally disagree in the decision to ban them and the reasons stated. People aren't really denying the logic of these are game ruiners when they show up really early. They're just saying the odds of them showing up really early are not as high as the rules committee seems to imply. Something specifically relevant to call out about the commander format here is that your commander format decks are 100 unique cards. This means that even if these two cards are broken to the point where I think it's fundamentally understood that you kind of have to have them in your deck, you can only have one of each one out of 100 cards. So assuming everybody has them, everybody has the same number, they can't stack their deck with a bunch of these cards, and they all have the same theoretically low odds of getting them any one turn, including the early turn. The other reason people are upset is because those cards, because of how valuable they are to the game, are worth a lot of money on the secondhand market. This gets into an almost entirely separate topic, and it's something I brought up before in the Neopets video. If you let a game go on long enough, the community for the game will make their own economy every time. In this case, the economy is reselling cards. The extremely TLDR on this is you can't buy individual cards from Wizards of the Coast. You have to buy a pack, has a random assortment. There are some things guaranteed in there, but you don't know exactly what you're gonna get. And so if you need a specific card, your choices are to go to a secondhand market. That could be an individual store that cracked their own packs open and found cards that are worth reselling individually, or that could be online and you have to go find it. Or you have to buy a shit ton of packs from Wizards of the Coast on the off chance you get the one that you want. Of course, the selling value of these cards on the secondary market is hugely impacted by how valuable they are in game. So we've got 4 cards that we know are hugely important to the game to the point where they are functionally game breaking, and they just got banned. A lot of people very unhappy. And at least from the outside, it looked like these were the people who were the most upset. And there are different reasons why. Some people were showing that they bought multiple versions of each of these cards so that they could resell them or as some form of investment. And they're basically saying, look at all this money you just set on fire. There were also accusations that the rules committee was doing like insider trading by selling off those cards prior to announcing this. There were accusations that the rules committee leaked this decision to their friends beforehand so that they could offload their stuff. There's no actual evidence for any of that I can find. The people who owned multiples of the same card that now all went down in value, the response was pretty much, well, we know for Commander you can only use one of these in any deck, so if you have multiples, it's clearly an investment, and every investment has risks. Card bans are not a new thing for the Magic community. Again, there are 25,000 cards in like dozens of formats. They get banned all the time. There are also people saying, hey, I bought just one of each of these to play in Commander and I saved up for them and it was hard for me to get them because it was like $500 to get all 4 and now I can't use any of them and I've lost all of that. The response to that being, if these cards are so critical that you can't play the game without them, and it also costs that much money to get them in most cases, then that is creating a financial floor to even play the game in the first place. So again, it's evidence that they should be banned, while that situation definitely sucks for people who did have to do that. The discourse on this went on and on and on. The rules committee, for the most part, stayed out of it after their initial announcement. So they were sent death threats. Have been shared directly, but according to a number of different people on and around the rules committee, a whole bunch of different types of threats came through against the committee members if they didn't undo the ban, including threats to physically confront people at tournaments. This got bad enough that after a few weeks, multiple members of the committee had resigned, and ultimately the committee control was handed over to Wizards of the Coast by the remaining committee members. This is something no one wanted, but I also can't blame them. In response to this, people are denying that the threats took place, though I'm seeing a lot of people, again, people who would see them, say that there have been threats. Did make the prices for these cards on the secondary market rebound a bit because people assumed that Wizards of the Coast would undo the bans. They have said that they're not going to do that, at least not for a number of months. Wizards have said they'd like to implement a tier system, which is actually fairly close to the one recommended by Goonhammer.com because they have a Magic the Gathering section that I am shamelessly plugging as a good spouse. If you play Magic and would like to check that out.